Hi guys, welcome to Beauty by the Numbers. Today we're joined by Tom Evans from ASOS. Do you want to kind of give us a bit of an intro to yourself before we get started?
Yeah, hi Emily. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I am a data scientist. I've worked in data for about 10 years across various different industries. Currently working at ASOS, supporting their AI function and helping build kind of models that support the retail and beauty space.
We're really excited to have you on with us today. Do you want to set the scene for us? How has data shaped the retail industry, and what are the kind of exciting ones that you're using data at the moment?
Yeah, I guess fundamentally, data has changed the retail space significantly, right? I think if you look back 10, 15 years ago, kind of the shapes of businesses, both retail and others, kind of looked very, very different to how they do today. And actually quite a lot of new functions, new departments have really kind of boomed over the past 10 to 15 years. So for instance, obviously you've got the data teams, you've now got AI teams, you've got analytics has changed and grown quite significantly. So really, if you were to distill it down to one key thing, really it's just changed the shape of businesses entirely. And really that's kind of because of the fact that decision making has had to change. A lot of decisions now need to be data driven. There needs to be, it's less of an kind of instinct driven space, and actually much more of how businesses operate and what businesses do need to be driven by the fundamental data they're seeing. And I like to see it as kind of, if you're not using data, then you're kind of operating blind, really. And it's really, really difficult to operate without it. I guess in terms of interesting ways that retail space use data now, I think there's quite a lot, right? Things like ranging, making sure that you've kind of got making sure that you've got the right products on your shelf, making sure that you're marketing those products to the right people, making sure that you're measuring how different activity that you've done has impacted certain things. So obviously it's a big area in experimentation, right? If you're a D2C business, then typically you'll have quite a good feedback in terms of whether or not like any changes that you make to your website might impact purchasing behavior. And so there's a huge area there. And then things like things like stock decisions. So how much stuff should I have in my warehouse? And really it all is fundamentally to drive kind of better, more profitable ways of operating.
Yeah, no, definitely. And tell us a little bit, you've obviously had a really exciting sort of career journey so far. Give us a bit of an insight into your career journey so far.
Yeah, my career journey is, so obviously I started my career before data science was really a thing, and kind of at the beginnings of when businesses were realizing that a lot of the new data functions like analytics, insights, and was really needed. And so I obviously, like most data scientists, I graduated in physics, and kind of entered into the market as an analyst, kind of supporting a company that would track PC shipments around the world. It was quite an interesting kind of foray into the world of, I guess, turning data and distilling it into something that's valuable and usable for businesses. This is something that I hadn't necessarily come across before. And like I said, this was kind of before data science was a thing. And then the new world of data science appeared and became very, very attractive for people who knew how to code, knew how to kind of pick up and wrangle with data. And so I kind of jumped into the world of data science, really. I joined a media agency. I then moved into dunnhumby, who own Tesco Clubcard data. and supported them with kind of retail modeling and that kind of thing. And then through various different roles, ended up here where I am at ASOS.
I thought it might be worth to mention, I know you do a few things sort of on the side. Yes, if you want to mention that, because it might be good for our audience to hear kind of some of the extra things that you're doing on the side of working at ASOS.
Yeah, I guess it's a great question. I personally think that, little bit of career advice for everyone out there. I think that your career is your own, right? And relying solely on kind of what you do at work or what you do inside of an organization, or even relying solely on one organization to help kind of accelerate your career isn't really the best strategy, I think, especially in the data space, because there's so much competition out there. There's so many new functions, new people coming into the market with different experiences. So I think extracurricular activity is really, really important to help keep you aware of what's going on outside of the kind of world that you're living in at that particular time. So I do quite a lot of stuff to just help really, I guess, keep me aligned to the industry as a whole. And by industry, I don't mean retail industry, I mean data science industry. So I do quite a lot of things like this, where I come in and do some speaking to people about things that I care about. I also do quite a lot of mentoring of various different people who are new into the industry. I remember when I first started, and there was kind of no one out there to speak to about how to operate and what to do. And so I quite like to speak to people who are just coming in and understanding what problems they're facing. And invariably I end up finding that it helps me with problems that I'm facing or things that I'm in, which I find really, really fascinating.
No, it's definitely really good, because obviously we have our sort of mentorship program at the moment as well. And I think it is so nice to have someone that's had industry experience to be able to talk to. I know lots of young people leave university and you sort of go into a job and oh my God, there's sort of someone there, like the work that you're doing, definitely, I'm sure definitely helps them out a lot. But
Yeah.
what other kind of, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that stepping in, like a lot, the data space is a very tech driven kind of mindset, and actually that doesn't often lend itself to when you're just starting into, say, an environment where actually it's very much about making money, right? And actually, how do you align the tech into kind of driving business decisions and driving businesses to build to align to their business goals is a gap that is actually quite hard to bridge, and I think it's something else. It's incumbent on people who have been in the industry a while and know stuff to kind of help share that information downwards.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree with that totally. And what are kind of some of the exciting developments that are happening in data at the moment you've seen recently?
I mean, it would be a bit remiss of me to not mention LLMs. I think obviously large language models are kind of in the kind of beginnings of peak or even peak of the hype cycle at the moment, and you see it everywhere that large language models going to come in and take everyone's jobs. Yeah, which and a lot of the kind of stuff that you read about them is quite sensationalist and not really a good kind of indicator of the future direction of that kind of piece of technology. However, it is still really, really exciting for the day-to-day workings of someone within the tech industry. Actually, a lot of colleagues and people I work with, and myself included, use things like ChatGPT to help do our jobs better, right? So actually, although it's kind of touted as something that's kind of come in and kind of destroy everything that everyone's doing, actually to a large extent, where I've actually seen it land and do things is where it's helping people do what jobs that they're already doing faster. Which is great. And obviously, so there's LLMs is obviously a a massive thing. I think a big, another area that maybe isn't talked about quite as much is kind of data maturity. I think that the data and ML maturity, I guess, like machine learning maturity, is kind of accelerated quite a lot over the past 2 to 3 years, in ways that have made being able to come in and do things much easier than when I first started out. So for me, that's really exciting. Like things like ML ops, it's things like better handling and understanding of data warehousing and organization of things like data lakes. And I mean, you hear lots of language about that kind of thing. Really, it's just about getting all of your data together, putting it somewhere and knowing where it is and how to get access to it. And like for much of my career, getting access to data has been a massive headache, right? Like it's been one of the biggest headaches that you have. And so I think businesses are becoming much more mature in the data space, and technology is becoming much more mature, which kind of allows that to happen. So I would say those two.
And kind of alongside all that stuff, what are the sort of challenges you see us facing?
The retail space or us generally?
Yeah, I'd say data in the retail space. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think obviously cost of living crisis, right? We're obviously kind of access to extra cash to spend on frivolous purchases is not is not there, right?
No.
Which means actually you're competing for us as a say a retail business. You're competing much harder for a smaller kind of piece of someone's wallet with any product that you have. And I think that's also kind of a little bit exacerbated by kind of the routes to market changing. So obviously things like influencer brands and things have appeared out of nowhere, especially in the beauty space, and kind of eating some of the bigger brands' lunch, right? And that's because the route to market is changed. In the past, it was stick your product on a shelf and advertise it on telly, and boom, you've got sales, right? It's not that way anymore. You don't advertise on telly. Actually, you don't always need to put your products on shelf. You can just stick it on TikTok.
Online.
Yeah. Set up a website relatively quickly, and suddenly if you do it right, you've got huge amounts of you can very quickly get scale. So I think both of those things are having a huge impact on the retail space, and are also driven a lot by kind of the data, right? Because actually a lot of those new channels that exist allow you to get really quick access to data on who's buying your product, where are they, why are they using it for? Like you get lots of information that you wouldn't have got if you've just chucked it on the shelf, right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
And then I guess last one that, and I'll talk about it really quickly because I know we don't have a huge amount of time, is kind of the customer of today. I think is very different from the customer of 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, because of access to information. I mean, in the past, you could pay lip service to kind of slogans and you can kind of espouse whatever belief that you have as a business through marketing activity. But access to information is such that paying lip service doesn't just do it, right? You need to actually kind of live and breathe. So let's say you're a 100% natural eco brand. People are going to find out if you're actually working with a dodgy supplier who supplies plastic that is, or you're working with a factory that doesn't behave very well. People are going to find out, and it's going to have a huge impact, which is in the past that consumers were somewhat blind to a lot of what goes on. So you kind of, as a business, need to be much more conscious of really being genuine and living and breathing the kind of beliefs that you have in order to get other people to believe that you believe them. Does that make sense?
I think if they don't, the consequences are quite
Yeah, they're damning.
Yeah.
They're really, really damning.
Definitely. How do you think we will sort of overcome these new challenges that we're facing?
I mean, I sort of alluded to it already in kind of making sure that you are kind of living and you're being genuine, right? I think
Yeah.
you need, as a brand, or if you have some kind of messaging, you really need to double check that it is something that is not just paying lip service to. But I also think that I guess if we're thinking about cost of living crisis and kind of how smaller brands come in and make impact on bigger brands and those kinds of dynamics, I think it really does come down to data and actually getting access and like accelerating the data maturity that you have internally will be a very a very good way to help you be more nimble. It will help you be less reactive. It'll help you be able to kind of shift and change your business in ways that your competitors aren't. So actually, I guess I think it's about handling your own data better and doing better data-driven decision making inside of your organization is going to give you the competitive advantage, which will allow you to react to changes better. It will allow you to react better than your competitors, and it will allow you to kind of navigate through the rough waters. I think if I come back to the analogy of being blind without data, if I told you to go into your kitchen and go get a glass of water, you'd be able to do it really, really easily. But if you try and do that with your eyes closed, you're not going to be able to do it. And then if you imagine also the entire room is shaking and there's a storm going on, then it becomes really, really impossible. And the only way that you can navigate through those rough seas is with really, really good access to your data on the markets, and kind of and have a data-driven decision-making ethos that kind of permeates through your entire business.
Yeah, right, definitely. And with the kind of importance of talent being obviously very close to our heart at Orbition, do you have any tips for sort of retaining and finding the right data talent? Because I know that can sometimes be really difficult as well.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's another way to kind of overcome the challenges as well, right? Is hiring the right people. It's not an easy it's not easy in tough times to hire, and I mean everything gets harder when markets get tougher, right? Everything gets harder, including finding talent, but especially retaining talent as well, because whilst you might be struggling as a business, there's others out there who may not be, and be able to, like, competition for people becomes much tougher. For me, I am a big believer in hire for attitude and hire for kind of hiring to okay, in the tech space, we often fall into the trap of kind of writing a whole long list of requirements of what we want someone to have, right? Which is, we would need them to have we need to be able to build some Terraform. We need to be able to, they've used these 3 cloud providers, and we want them to be able to have built this model in this sort of scale. And a lot of the danger of doing that is when there's 2 dangers in doing that. One is that when it's not often that actually you really need all of those things. And so when you hire someone in, they're expecting to do all of the things that you've said that they needed, and then they come in and they don't end up doing those things, and then they get annoyed and then they leave, right? So for me, from a hiring perspective, I like to keep it really, really straightforward and say, I really need these 3 or 4 key things, and be really, really clear about what they are, and be really clear about why you want them. And that can be in the job spec, it can be to the candidate, all the way through the process. Say, these are the 3 things that we really need, and these are why we need them. And then the rest is optional, right? The rest is nice to have. And once you know that you've got those 3 things, then focus in on the person, right? Focus in on making sure that they've got the kind of mindset that you need within your business to help drive whatever goals you have. Make sure they're kind of got the proactivity that you might need, or even it might be about balancing your team, right? About making sure that you're balancing the kinds of individuals that you have in your team. I like to build teams that don't think in exactly the same way. I like to build teams that have people in it that think differently. And I look for that kind of thing when I'm hiring. And what it does is help really build kind of really nice, cohesive teams that can problem solve very, very, very effectively. I think retaining talent is also a very, very difficult thing to do when money isn't flowing in, right? Because obviously you can't just chuck money at people. You can't, the promotions aren't as easy because roles don't open up that allow people to promote. And so in terms of retention, in absence of like accelerating people's careers in the way that they want, for me, I like to try to really get an understanding of what it is that individuals are hoping to achieve with their career, and then trying to align that with I want to achieve with the team or the business or the company or the department that I'm in charge of, right? And find the bit in the middle where there's overlap and focus in on those, right? And what that does is that really helps people kind of it helps people get more out of the role that they're currently in, which generally means people stay longer. Now, it generally means people are there for an extra 3, 4, 5, 6 months potentially, because actually they're learning something that they know is valuable to them. Value doesn't just have to come from the balance, from the salary or the job title. Although that is something that you really do need to pay pay a lot of attention to when you're looking at your retention. But really, for me, it's about making sure that you're giving people things that they know will be useful to them in future. And it's somewhat counterintuitive to think of it this way, because obviously you don't want to be kind of giving someone tools that will then make it easier for them to leave. But people leaving is inevitable, right? There's always change happening. I think having people leave because they become really, really good is the cost of doing a good thing, and you get value out of that yourself. So I actually do like to give people bullet points that they can put on their CV, right? I'm trying to make sure that here is a thing that I know that you'll be able to put on your CV, irrelevant of whether or not you're going to stick here with us or whether or not you're going to go elsewhere. And having that mentality actually ends up working to have people retain, because they know they're going to get something, and they see other people getting something that will be valuable to them. They see other people getting things on their bullet points, and you become almost just it motivates people. It really helps people feel like they're getting what they need out of the role that they're currently doing, and less focusing solely on, oh, I'm not getting the money that I want, because no one ever gets the money they want, right? Everyone can do with an extra 10, 15K. And everyone wants a promotion, right? I mean, it's just those things are given. Yeah.
I think we were actually speaking in the office yesterday about the sort of main motivators for data professionals, and we all came to the conclusions. Obviously, we're speaking to them sort of on a daily basis, and most people said it was actually the impact that their work is having in a business over. So I think a lot of the sort of clients that we deal with, the salaries are often potentially too low, or they don't they assume that salary might be the main motivator, when actually, especially I think when you actually speak to these candidates, it's really actually understanding what their motivations are and want to work at a company, and then matching them with the values and what that company is actually doing. But a lot of the time people do just assume automatically that salary is a main motivator, when sometimes
Yeah,
it's not.
I mean, the thing is, in the tech space, the it's changing so rapidly, right? And so I can very quickly feel like I'm not learning things that I'm going to need in the future, right? So for instance, LLMs, yeah, obviously that's something that everyone is seeing and hearing about right now, and it's something that's really top of mind for people. Is, oh, I'm not, if I stay here, I'm not going to learn LLMs, which means I'm going to become superfluous to requirements in the long term, right? It could be about something wildly different from that in a particular piece of technology. I think TensorFlow, back when TensorFlow was a slightly new thing, was something that kind of everyone was kind of, I really want to use TensorFlow because I know I'm going to need it in the future. And to your point around it having impact on the business, I've been a data scientist when data science was about writing a blog post, and it's miserable, right? It's really, really miserable. There's no point in spending 6-7 months pouring your kind of efforts into doing something, and then oh, I've just written a blog post about it and no one cares about it and no one's read it and no one's actually used what it is. Like, actually, data science has gone quite a lot on the journey of being more practical now. Like, practical AI is much more of a kind of focus for people inside the industry than it was when we first started, where it was maybe about doing the most cutting edge thing. So yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, and I agree. But still, everyone wants more money, right?
They do. It's a difficult. I think it's a difficult in between to find. Because I had sort of a role the other day, and it was in between salary or actually the role itself.
Yeah.
And I'd never, to be honest, if that was me, salary for me is probably a main sort of motivator. But when I was speaking to this candidate, she actually said to me, "Oh no, that the role is actually so much more important to me," and it happens again and again and again, and it's just really an interesting thing to see, because sort of coming out of uni, I just assumed that everyone
but you can feel like it's really, really easy to feel like you're falling behind, right? Like, if you're sat down. When I first started, Excel was a tool to use, right? Everyone was using it. The world ran on it. It still runs on Excel, but it ran on Excel. And then obviously R and Python started to become tools that people needed to use in order to handle and deal with data. For about 5 to 6 years after that, everyone who was using Excel wanted to move into a job where they weren't using it anymore, and into using R and Python, because they could see everyone else going in that direction. And then now that's a really, like, if you find yourself in that position, money doesn't matter, right? Because you're just like, I'm falling behind. Like, you're thinking about future money. You're not thinking about now money, right? You're thinking about, I need to know Python. I need to do that. FOMO is real, right? You get proper FOMO. And actually, I think there's still, because of how fast technology has changed, and kind of the speed of maturity of AI has meant FOMO has continued, right? It then was moved from Python into maybe cloud architectural type stuff, or it moved from like tree-based models into deep neural nets, and then it's moved into now LLMs and transformer models, and like, there's FOMO everywhere. It keeps going, right? There's always a bit of FOMO happening somewhere.
There is. Well, Tom, it's been lovely chatting with you today. I'm sure our audience will be so pleased with all the insights that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you, Emily.